Hello there. What is going on, everybody? Today I'm bringing to you a KeyForge top 10 of the Mars cards in KeyForge. This is a preliminary list. I've been doing this for every faction, and this is just basically early. Like, the game's still new, so I'm bringing out the top 10 as it stands now. And like I've said in all of my top 10 videos so far, these rankings are likely to change as the game is played more and as we get more comfortable with it, and as I think player understandings of synergies and as new strategies present themselves. That being said, this is a top 10 list. This is primarily my opinion, so I'm going to preface it with that. If you disagree, you're totally more than likely to disagree with it. Also, you know, there's definitely more than 10 good cards in Mars, so this isn't saying anything that's not on this list is bad. There were a lot of cards that were very close that just didn't make the cut, just barely. So I'm going to preface it with that too. Your favorite card may be on here. It might have just been 11 in my book. But then again, we all have our different play styles. We all have our different preferences. And most notably in this game, we all have different decks. So what works for you might never work for me because I'll never have the same deck you have. I'll never have the same synergy with that card that you have. And a lot of these cards are also very synergy dependent, and that's one of the things that kind of pushes things out of the top 10 for me a little bit, because you know, you're not always going to have a card that's going to work well with another card. Certain cards are more dependent on certain scenarios. A lot of these factions have a card, oh, destroy all creatures from this, or destroy all creatures from this faction. Well, that's great, but it's completely useless if you're not playing that. Or if it ends up being in a deck where you have that, it could hurt you too. So, like, a lot of those type of cards don't always make it in my top 10s because they're just so situational. You know, so even though it may be really great for you, you know, that's why certain cards don't make my top 10 list. But again, this is still early. And before I jump into number 10, I do want to remind you guys, there is a huge giveaway going on right now for a Superstar Destroyer in the form of a Cool Stuff gift card. So if you want to win a massive, huge Cool Stuff gift card that you can pick yourself up a Superstar Destroyer for Star Wars Armada or whatever else you want to use it on, all you have to do to enter to win that is become a subscriber and leave a comment on this or one of my videos. It's as simple as that. Make sure you click that bell for alerts too. You don't want to miss out on when new videos come out. Plus, when I announce the winner, which should be on or about December 21st, people are constantly asking me when is the giveaway winner announced, and I'm pretty sure I say it in just about every video. So pay attention and watch toward the ends of the video, because it will not be at the beginning of a video. It will be at the end of a video, and it kind of builds up to this blah, 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 Merry Christmas, and here's your stuff, something like that. So with all that said, let's jump into my top 10. Starting in at number 10, it is Felix the Disintegrator. He is a Martian, he is a soldier, he's only power 1, but he's got elusive, so he will hopefully stay alive just a little bit longer. But here's a really, really cool creature, and I think this guy is really cool. First off, he really forces your opponent to deal with him, and it's going to draw some type of nasty card. It's going to have to draw some kind of direct damage card, which are always nice to get those out of your opponent's hand, or maybe a board clearing card, and it happens to be, you know, a really good early, fairly early to mid game card. It doesn't have to necessarily be a first turn play, but just a really good card. The reason is this action. Okay, there's a couple of reasons why this card just tends to work and is likely to work in a lot of Mars decks. Granted, it does require a little bit of setup because you need other Mars creatures, right? You need other Mars creatures. He specifically points out other friendly Mars creatures, so he is not going to work if he's your only Mars creature, right? So you need other Mars creatures. That is a dependency. That's what ranks him a little bit lower. But you're still likely to get other Mars creatures. That's not a huge dependency, because if you've got a deck with Mars in it, it's a pretty good chance you got other Mars creatures. That being said, he's an action, so obviously you play him, he's going to come into play exhausted. There is so much stuff in Mars that's going to allow you to bring this guy in either ready or to ready him and then play him again. There's so many things that can do that it's not really that dependent. It's not really counting on that much synergy. It has natural synergy with what Mars as a faction does, and you can really make somebody lose a lot of amber. You're not capturing it either. They're losing it. It's gone. You know, a lot of stuff like capture, a lot of creatures that capture amber. A lot of times that's just a stalling mechanism. This one's better than a stall because they can't just kill him and take it back. So he's got a lot of things going for him. He's elusive. He is got natural synergy with the Mars faction. He can hurt your opponent's amber game, which is and it can potentially do it really bad. Like it's not that hard to envision a scenario where you play a couple of Mars cards in a big Mars turn and make your opponent lose 4 amber, or potentially even more than that. So it's huge. And they don't. And the thing is, those other Mars creatures don't have to be readied, so they can even be exhausted already. Really nice. And because there is a lot of stuff that readies other Mars creatures, you could potentially use this guy twice in one turn. Really nasty. I mean, wait till you stop somebody from forging a key, or unforge a key or something like that with them, and then use this guy. Insanity would ensue. So yes, Felix the Disintegrator, very, very nice. Combos really well with Dis too. I think there's some other really cool stuff you could do that. All right, Mass Abduction at number 9. Mass Abduction. First off, it's an action that gives you an amber, so it's automatically got good points there. But yes, this one is very similar to a number of other cards in Mars. There are several cards that all have the ability to put enemy creatures into your archive. And I didn't want to put all of those that do the same thing in the list, so there's other ones here, and I think different ones work in different proximities. But this one is my potential favorite. For one, it's gonna take up to 3, and it's not that hard to get damage on multiple creatures. There's a variety of cards that do that, or attacking. Mars has a lot of creatures that can put out a lot, that are fairly high in power. They've got a good blend of high-powered and low-powered creatures, but it's just so nasty to be able to take 3 enemy creatures and put them in your archive. It's not exactly a board clearing card, but it denies your opponent potentially permanently the use of 3 of their creatures. Very, very nasty. And also, if you're holding this card, you may want to pull from your archive if you have other stuff in your deck, and it's an easy workaround, because the problem here is you're putting them in your archive. If you pull from your archive again, then they go back. So you kind of want to leave them in your archive and never bring them out again. The thing is, that sounds like, oh, that's bad because then I'm denying. Well, if you have an archive, before you play this turn, you say, all right, Mars, now pull your archive, now play Mass Abduction. So yeah, you'll have all this stuff in your hand. So you can control just how badly a penalty like this, you could completely negate the penalty just by playing around it. And this is something I think you'll have to play a little bit more. This one might shift a little bit more as the game develops, but I think it's a strong card. And it also, even if you don't get maximum effect out of it, maybe you've only got 1 or 2 creatures, you're also gaining an amber. So it's powerful that way as well. Next one is number 8, Ammonia Clouds. This one is going to deal 3 damage to each creature. It's just straight up very effective. Combos with other things that want damage on creatures. And there's so many Mars creatures that are tough where you can very easily play this on your own creatures. But it's a good board clearing card. It's not going to clear the board of everything. Sometimes you don't want to clear the board of everything. But since it also combos with other cards like Mass Abduction, for example, all right, I'll play Ammonia Clouds, kill all of your small creatures, and then I'll take 3 of your big creatures to take them away after they've taken damage. And what makes this one so nice is there are a lot of cards that can do a little bit of damage, but this is doing 3 to everything. Is when you look at armored creatures, and Sanctum Knights, for example, is one thing that can be really hard to get rid of with direct damage spells because they have that armor. Well, very few creatures have more than 2 armor. It's very rare to see that. I mean, there are special cases or upgrades or this, you have 2 knights bolstering each other's armor or something like that. But most of the time, 3 damage is going to be enough to get past those shields. And also combo with whatever else you're doing. Maybe you attack first and then play Ammonia Clouds second once their armor is already used up. But it's just a very flexible card. It's a really nice card. A card I would almost always rather have, especially in Mars that doesn't have as much board clearing stuff. So I really, really like Ammonia Clouds. Number 7, Key Abduction. This one is a really tricky one, and I was kind of tempted not to put it on this list, but it's still a little higher than some of the other cards. Key Abduction is, and I think one of the thing that gave it the edge is that you're getting an amber. So even if you don't want to use it, even if you don't have the Mars creatures out, you can still just gain amber. Also, if you just want to if you have Mars creatures with play abilities, maybe you want to just do that too. It also doubles as if you happen to be playing against Mars, you can return all those Mars creatures to their owner's hands as well. Granted, that can be a double-edged sword, but it's better to have the option to do it than not to have the option to do it. If your opponent's got 8 Mars creatures out and they're just reaping every turn, you can then turn around and say, all right, Key Abduction, I'm going to return all these Mars creatures to your hand. And that can combo with other things as well. But since everything about Mars, well, not everything, but a lot of Mars stuff is all about making sure that you have a lot of Mars cards in your hand, it just naturally synergizes with all of those. And we haven't gotten to the best part yet. The best part is that you can forge a key on your turn. This is like their key charge for Mars. It requires a lot more setup. And that's what originally made me think this was cool, but not that cool, is because for it to really work, ideally, like in the ideal situation, you want to have a lot of Mars creatures out, and then play this, and then forge a card at much lower. Maybe, if this combines well with logos too, for example, you've got an archive and you've got Mother out there, you might have 14 cards in hand, and now you're getting you end up getting a discount. As your current cost gets reduced by 1 for each card in your hand. So as long as you have more than 9 cards in your hand, then you can end up getting a great discount. But, and here's the but, you don't have to play this just for that case. It basically is like 4 different things. 1, it's giving you an amber. 2, it can return your opponent's creatures to their hand, which can be really effective if they have Mars. 3, it's putting your Mars creatures back in your hand. By the way, if you called Mars to play this, you can use your creatures first, then put them back, and then play them again. And then 4, it's giving you the ability to forge a key. So this one just does so much. I had to give it a decent spot in my top 10 list. It's very versatile and very flexible, and that counts for a lot. Key Abduction, number 7. And number 6, it's our favorite little buddy, John Smith. John Smith. He's a power 2. He's elusive, hard to kill. One of the weaker Mars creatures, but boy, he's got a great ability, and it combos into so many other things. So when you fight or reap with him, you can ready a non-agent Mars creature. Again, this builds into some of the other things we were talking about, like with Felix the Disintegrator. You can ready and then basically use again another non-Mars creature. You can trigger all your reap abilities. A lot of Mars creatures have reap abilities or fight abilities. Some Mars creatures, especially some of the most powerful Mars creatures, come into play stunned. So one of the things you can do this way is also clear that stun. Or if you don't play them on the same turn, if they clear their stun and then they're exhausted, you can ready them and then actually use them. So he just has a lot of synergy. John Smith isn't on his own. He doesn't seem all that great. But I think his ability synergizes so well with a lot of cards in the Mars faction that I gave him a good spot on this list. Number 6 is John Smith. Number 5, simple card here, Squawker. Gives you an amber. It's good. You can ready a Mars creature or stun a non-Mars creature. So if you haven't been able to tell already, versatility and flexibility is something that really works very well for me. That's something that I rank very high. And I may be different than some of you guys out there in that regard. Maybe you want singularly focused, very powerful cards, and those are great too. But I personally rank flexibility a lot higher because of the nature of this game. And this one definitely does that for me. It does basically 3 different things, but 3 different really good things. First off, an amber is always good. Stunning a non-Mars creature is really good as well. But the best thing is to ready a Mars creature, similar to how John Smith works, but this one happens right away and gives you an amber in the process. Readying a Mars creature, always nice, especially on those power turns where you're going to need to play something right away. Or in the case of like a Felix the Disintegrator or a John Smith, where you can ready a creature, use it again, ready another creature, start this chain. Chain is probably not the best word. Start a series of events that can continually trigger other events. And so in this case, in theory, maybe I ready John Smith, reap with him again, and use his ability to then trigger and ready Felix the Disintegrator again. Now, draining all the rest of your amber and gaining an amber in the process. Just really, really good. Plus tons of other abilities, and other cards out there that may be less awesome on their own, but when you factor in all these chained or series of events, you can end up with some really great playability and flexibility, because Mars is can be a tricky faction to work right, and this card enables a lot of the synergies to work properly. Time for number 4, Deep Probe. Again, it's an amber generating card, so that's always nice. I think this card is less flexible, but still a little bit flexible, but really super potentially strong. Deep Probe, you can play this, choose a house, reveal your opponent's hand, discard each creature of that house revealed this way. Now, there's 7 houses, but you have a pretty good idea which 3 are going to be in your opponent's hand, right? So, and also based on, oh wait, my opponent hasn't played any discards in like 4 turns. Now it's time for a Deep Probe, all right? Even if you miss, you're also getting to look at your opponent's hand. So that's doing 2 things right on its own. First off, you're getting rid of creatures. Second off, you're getting to look at their hand. Third off, you're getting an amber. And there's a 4th benefit that's lies a little bit deeper beneath the surface. If you are able to get rid of some of their creatures, even 1 or 2, you're still starting them with a smaller hand size. And what that means is on their turn, they have less options now, because they're not going to draw to refill their hand until the end of their turn. So you're doing this on your turn. They've already drawn to refill their hand. Now you're going to say Deep Probe. Now what this doesn't get is not going to get their archive, which very, very few things do. But you're still potentially getting rid of stuff. This is really good against certain decks that are just really, really useful. If your opponent is playing Horseman, for example, you can get rid of that one that's going to pull them all back to their hand. You can, it's a lot of flexibility on this, and it can also. I want to point out, if you were to play Key Abduction, let me go back to Key Abduction. If you are playing against another Mars, I mean seriously, if you're playing against Mars and they do have like 8 Mars creatures out, it looks like you're going to run away with it. Okay, well, I'll play Key Abduction, bounce all Mars creatures back to their owner's hand. Maybe I forge a key, maybe I don't. But now I play Deep Probe and choose Mars. You lose everything, plus what you had in your hand. And now I also know what you have in your hand, and I gain an amber. Forget about it. So Deep Probe, it's not just good against Mars, it's good against, anything. Theoretically, though, if you go up against a deck with like only 3 or 4 creatures in there, it might not be as strong. However, a deck with only 3, a deck with very few creatures, those creatures are probably going to matter more. So, it could still be good against those. Plus, it's still letting you know what's in their hand. On to number 3, Battle Fleet. Good artwork on this one too, by the way. I like a Battle Fleet. So thematically, I already like this card. But yeah, this also is another amber generator. Already get bonus points right there. When you play this, you're revealing any number of Mars cards from your hand, and for each card revealed this way, draw a card. This is like your first turn play. This is really, really strong, and it just helps you fill up your hand, especially in a deck that doesn't have a whole lot of archive potential. And since Mars doesn't really need a whole lot of archive, they do have some archive cards, but there are several cards similar to what I've played earlier, or an earlier card where I'm talking about putting enemy stuff into your own archive, and there's several cards that do that. I think in the ideal Mars deck, you really don't want as many archive stuff, and this is a better alternative to being able to get a lot of cards in your hand. And I just think this is great. Like, if you actually have a handful of 6 Mars cards, right, and if you build up to that, and then you play Battle Fleet, and then you got, maybe you draw 5 more cards, you're going to have pretty good chance maybe you get more Mars cards in there, and you just have more and more stuff you can play. Combine this with other cards like Key Abduction, all right? Maybe you end up forging a key for free if you get the right combination. But this is so good because it can factor into anything. Even if you end up not drawing extra Mars cards, maybe you've only got 3 cards in hand. Maybe it just gets you, a really good turn for next turn. But ideally, you want this to be one of those cards that really lets you draw a power, a power Mars turn. And this is just a great one for that. The only risk is that you draw no Mars cards, and then your other cards in hand that also relied on Mars cards in hand suffer a little bit. But ultimately, this is a really, really fun one, and it's giving you an amber on top of that. Number 2, orbital bombardment. Again, factoring into the theme of Mars, which is you want a lot of Mars cards in hand. We have the amber that we're going to gain, which is automatically good. And when you play this, you reveal any number of Mars cards from your hand, and for each card revealed this way, deal 2 damage to a creature, and you may choose a different creature for each time. So this is going to happen one at a time. Just awesome, awesome direct damage board clearing ability. The only drawback is you can't do like 3 to one and 3 to another. You have to do it in groups of 2. So 2, 4, then 6, 8. So if your opponent has a bunch of 3-powered creatures, a little bit might go to waste here. But it's a good way to deal with armor. It's a good way to deal with big creatures, and it's effective. It's a really good way to deal with like a lot of 2-power creatures, because you can just bing, 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 bing. You know, especially those creatures that are elusive and those creatures that are right next to a creature with taunt. It's just really, really nice, and I'd always rather have this than not have it. And these type of cards too are really easy to play. You know, the cards that require you to have Mars cards in hand, I understand that that's a situational thing, but it's not something that you're not going to get a Mars deck that doesn't at least have 12 Mars cards in it. So you're always going to have that option. So that's not something, you know, and you can control that by playing other houses and saving up to the big Mars turn. So it's not something that you have to rely on luck for, and it's not something that's out of your control. So you can control, you know, how strong your orbital bombardment is going to be. So you build up for that powerful turn. And you won't need this like on the first or second turn, because a lot of times your opponent's not going to start off with that many creatures. Granted, you know, I say that, and then your very next game you're going to have, you know, 6 creatures out by turn 2. But usually that's not the case. Usually it's 1 or 2 creatures a turn. And so by like maybe turn 3, now you've got a big Mars hand size. Now you can selectively target who you need to kill without having to like purge the entire board. This way you leave your creatures on the board and able to do whatever you need. Orbital bombardment. And number 1, are you ready? Have you guessed it yet? Before I go to number 1, do you have a guess? Well, let's see if you guessed right. Phosphorus Stars. This is my favorite Mars card to see in any Mars deck. When I'm opening a Mars deck, if I see this card, I feel much, much better about this. You know, and I love this card. When you play it, it stuns each non-Mars creature, and I gain 2 chains. This one is not a board clearing card, but it's so much nastier, and it works really, really good with a board clearing card, because you effectively waste so much of your opponent's time. First off, stun is an incredibly powerful effect, and if you're not familiar with stun, basically you put a stun marker on a creature. When the next time they want to activate that creature, instead they remove the stun and exhaust it, so it does nothing. So you're making them, like, if you have a power creature out there that reaps and does something awesome, and I stun it, it's going to take you 2 turns. And then by the time maybe you're ready to use it again, then maybe I kill it with an ammonia clouds or some other mass removal spell. It's just a great way to force people to choose a house they didn't want to choose, just so they can unstun all their creatures. I really like this one against maybe horseman decks, for example, right? Or any deck that has a lot of creatures of one house. They have all those creatures out. Like they play this, maybe Brobnar. They play 6 creatures in one turn. And I say, all right, Phosphorus Stars, boom, they're all stunned. And so then the person has no more Brobnar cards. So then they deliberately select Brobnar again just to unstun all their creatures. And I'm like, okay, fine. Now I'll play the board clearing. Now I'll choose Dis and play Gateway to Dis or something, or something like that. Incredibly effective. And I love Phosphorus Stars. And the 2 chains is not that much of a penalty to gain for just how powerful that card is. Obviously, you don't want to have the board full of non-Mars creatures of your own when you do this, because this can potentially stun your own. But again, you have this card in your deck, so you're going to control, the ups and downs of it. Maybe you hold off on playing all of those Sanctum Knights or those Dis Demons or whatever, and then you play this first at the right time, and then fill up the board with your own creatures. Your opponent's going to have a harder time react because they got a whole bunch of stunned creatures. Just great control, great board control with this card, and really factors into a lot of other stuff. So that is my top 10 Mars cards. Do you agree? Do you disagree? What did I leave out that you really thought should have been included? Do you think that this list, I think this list will probably change over time. Probably more so than most other lists, just because I think Mars is maybe the most unique faction because it's very, very self-sufficient, self-dependent, and plays, I think, most differently from all of the other factions. So I think Mars could see maybe the most changes as we become more comfortable with the game. But I would love to hear what you guys think. Let me know down in the comments below. Don't forget to enter to win that giveaway. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. Click that bell for alerts. You can hop over to Crabbok.com, and you can jump in Discord and chat with us there as well. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. And as always, have a great day.